It was a normal day, calm skies, a peaceful island, two jumbo jets full of people heading to paradise. But within minutes, 583 lives would be lost, not due to war, not due to terrorism, but because of a series of small, tragic mistakes that led to the worst accident in aviation history. March 26, 1977, Pan Am Flight 1736 had already crossed the Atlantic. It had departed Los Angeles, stopped briefly in New York to pick up more passengers, and was now en route to Las Palmas, the capital of the Canary Islands. It carried 380 passengers and crew, many of them elderly Americans, excited to begin a dream cruise vacation. At the same time, another Boeing 747 KLM Flight 4805 was flying in from Amsterdam. On board were 248 passengers and crew. Both planes were heading to the same sunny destination, but they never made it, a bomb threat that also caused this disaster. At Las Palmas Airport, just hours before their scheduled arrivals, chaos erupted. A separatist group known as MPAYAC, which wanted independence for the Canary Islands, had planted a bomb in the terminal building. The explosion injured several people and damaged part of the airport. Authorities immediately shut down Las Palmas Airport, diverting all incoming flights to a nearby island, Tenerife, and its much smaller airport, Los Rodeos. The KLM and Pan Am flights were among those diverted. Neither the passengers nor the crew could have imagined that this last-minute change would put them on a path toward disaster. Incapacity of Tenerife Airport to cater larger planes. The Los Rodeos Airport on Tenerife was not built to handle so many large aircraft. It had only one runway, one parallel taxiway, and a small parking area. Soon, the airport became overcrowded. Jets were parked on the taxiways, blocking normal movement. When the KLM flight landed, the weather was still clear. The plane taxied in and parked near the terminal. The crew decided to fully refuel while waiting for Las Palmas to reopen. This decision would later prove to be fateful. It caused a delay and blocked others from moving. Meanwhile, the Pan Am plane also landed, but it couldn't park properly because the KLM jet was blocking the taxiway. So Pan Am had to wait behind it, stuck. One of the factors of the collision was fog. As the hours passed, weather conditions started to change. A dense fog began to cover the airport, rolling in from the nearby ocean. Visibility dropped to less than 300 meters, barely enough for pilots to see the end of the runway. The airport had no ground radar, so air traffic control couldn't actually see where the planes were. They had to rely entirely on radio communication and the pilots' reports. Eventually, Las Palmas reopened. The KLM crew, eager to get back on schedule, requested permission to taxi for takeoff. But because the normal taxiway was still blocked, KLM was told to taxi down the actual runway, make a 180-degree turn at the end, and get ready for departure. Right behind them, Pan Am was instructed to follow on the same runway, but to exit at a designated taxiway, C3, before the KLM plane turned around, clearing the runway for KLM to take off. It was a delicate maneuver in thick fog with limited scenage and radio chatter overlapping. A perfect storm was brewing, deadly misunderstanding by crew. As both planes slowly moved down the fog-covered runway, confusion started to grow. The Pan Am pilots couldn't see the taxiway exits clearly. They accidentally missed the one they were supposed to take and continued on the runway, unknowingly staying in the KLM's path. At the same time, the KLM captain, one of the airline's most senior and respected pilots, Jacob Van Zanten, believed he had clearance to take off. But he didn't. There had been miscommunication over the radio. The air traffic controller had told KLM to stand by for takeoff, but due to radio interference and poor phraseology, the message was either not fully heard or misunderstood. Despite one of his crew members, the flight engineer, asking if the runway was clear, the captain firmly replied, "Oh yes," and then he pushed the throttles forward. How actually the collision happened? The massive KLM 747 began racing down the runway at full speed, its engines roaring, lights cutting through the fog. Up ahead, the Pan Am pilots suddenly saw lights, at first faint and unclear. They thought the plane approaching them was still taxiing, but then to their horror, they realized it was coming straight at them at full speed. The Pan Am crew tried to turn sharply off the runway, but the KLM plane was already too close. Traveling at around 260 km per h, 160 miles per hour, the KLM 747's nose lifted off the ground, but its underbelly and landing gear struck the Pan Am aircraft, tearing through the fuselage. The impact caused a massive explosion. Both planes were filled with fuel. KLM had just refueled completely. A fireball engulfed the aircraft. Everyone on board, KLM flight 4805, 248 people died instantly. On the Pan Am jet, the forward section was completely destroyed. Many in first class were killed on impact, but miraculously, 61 passengers and crew in the rear survived, some by jumping through holes in the fuselage or sliding down makeshift ropes. In total, 583 people were killed. Question arises here why the disaster happened. The investigation that followed was one of the most detailed in aviation history. It found a tragic chain of errors. 1. The terrorist bombing in Las Palmas that forced the diversions. 2. Tenerife's limited airport facilities, never designed for large jets. 3. Thick fog, reducing visibility to nearly zero. 4. Poor signage, making it hard for Pan Am to find the exit. 5. Radio miscommunication, especially overlapping messages. 6. And most importantly, KLM's premature takeoff without final clearance. Though all factors played a role, the KLM captain was ultimately held responsible for initiating takeoff without a clear, confirmed instruction. Ironically, the captain, Jacob Van Zanten, had been featured in KLM's safety ads and training manuals. His decision, in a moment of impatience and misunderstanding, changed aviation forever. This tragedy has left enormous aftermath. The tragedy of Tenerife forced the entire aviation world to re-examine its protocols. Major changes were implemented across the globe. Standardized radio phraseology. Phrases like takeoff are now only used when clearance is 100% confirmed. Crew Resource Management (CRM). Co-pilots and engineers are now trained to question captains, and captains are trained to listen. Ground radar systems became mandatory at major airports to track aircraft on runways. Runway markings and signage were improved worldwide. Even the location of Tenerife Airport was changed. A new airport, Tenerife South, was built in a safer area with better visibility. The Tenerife disaster was not caused by one person or one event. It was a domino effect of stress, miscommunication, poor planning, and human error. And yet, from this horrific moment, the aviation industry made changes that have saved countless lives since. Today, every time a pilot confirms takeoff clearance, every time air traffic control repeats an instruction, and every time a crew member speaks up in the cockpit, it's because of Tenerife. We remember the 583 lives lost, not to relive the pain, but to ensure it never happens again. Thanks for watching. If you like the video, please like, share and subscribe.